All right, today is part 2 of Utah Middle School Math Project 1.1c, solving multi-step equations. But to get started, we are going to review this vocabulary that we talked about in our last lesson. So please review with your groups or pause the recording long enough to review each of these words. And now that you have had a chance to review, please raise your hand to tell me what is the difference between an expression and an equation. What is the difference between an expression and an equation? Miley. Exactly, they're both math sentences. The equation has an equal sign, which leads us very nicely into this screen right here. Remember how I made you write this in addition to all the other times we wrote it? Because an equation is an expression equal to another expression, or a math sentence equal to a math sentence. So this is an important thing to understand because the equations that we're going to be solving now are going to be made up of expressions that have to be simplified before they can be solved. We have to take that step to simplify first, and then we can solve. And that's exactly what we did last time. We had some algebra tiles, and we realized, hey, wait a second, we can combine those. We haven't seen that before. Previously, we only had x in one spot, but now we had x in two spots. We had to combine those like terms. And we finished off with assigning 3 and 4 as homework. So let's go over these ones now. Number 3. Notice first and foremost, this is an equation because it is an expression which is equal to another expression. We don't need to worry about simplifying 6. 6 is already simplified. But we do need to worry about simplifying this piece. So before we even start trying to solve, we need to simplify. If I have 4x tiles and 3x tiles, I have 7x tiles. And minus 1, that's just an extra negative 1 tile, all equal to 6. Now we can start solving because it's simplified. This expression is now a simplified expression equal to a simplified expression. Now that they're both simplified, now we can solve. I am curious to know who, when they did their homework, who drew the models. Okay. Some of you did, not everybody did. I'm not going to show what that model looks like. The way that you're going to check is, does your model match my thing? And if it does, then we're good to go. Once we get to this point, because I changed that subtraction to adding a negative, and we're getting ready to solve, I encourage you to change that adding a negative back to subtraction. Here's why. How do you undo addition? Subtraction. So in order to undo this, I would have to subtract a negative 1, and doesn't that look messy? But we also know that taking away rocks is the same as adding balloons. So we really truly can just add 1. And also recognizing that is really helpful because what are we really doing? We have a negative tile. How do I get rid of a negative tile? We add a positive to zero it out. And whatever I do to one side, we do it to the other side. Remember, this zero's a negative tile and a positive tile, 0. And now I'm left with 7x, which is equal to 7. Now we're ready to divide each side by 7. When I divide each side by 7, the 7's divide out. 7 divided by 7 is just 1. So 7x divided by 7 is one single x, which is equal to 7 divided by 7 is 1. How'd you guys do? Thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down. Thumbs down if you didn't even do it. Okay. Let's do the next one. Remember, this is an equation, which is an expression equal to an expression. 10 is already simplified. We don't need to worry about that. But this side, we need to simplify. And I can see I have a negative x tile. I have 3 positive x tiles and 4 unit tiles. All of that is equal to 10 unit tiles. But the first thing I need to do before I even think about solving, I have x tiles in 2 different places and I need to combine them. What happens when you have a positive and a negative x tile? They zero out. And when they zero out, what am I left with? 2 x tiles and 4 unit tiles. But we're not done. Yes, you simplified, but please understand that's only part of the problem. We know that that expression that has now been simplified is equal to this other part of the equation. It is equal to 10. And now at this point, now you can make a flow map and say, oh, what's happening to x? X is multiplied by 2, and then we add 4, so I know what I need to undo. I know how to undo it and what order. I'm going to undo adding 4 by subtracting 4. Whatever I do to one side, I do it to the other side. That leaves me with 10 minus 4, which is equal to 6. Bring down the equal sign. 6 is equal to 2x, because the 4 minus 4 zeroed out. We divide each side by 2, and we get 3 is equal to x. As I walked around the room and commented on your paper, if I commented on your paper, do you see your mistake? Do you see what you need to be doing differently? Okay. So here's some more, 5 and 6. With your groups. Model if you need to, but let me just review one last time what it is that we're doing. We have an expression equal to another expression. But guess what? Negative 8's already simplified. This part, not simplified. You have to simplify it first. Then you can solve it. Same thing here. We have an expression equal to an expression. 10 is an expression that's already simplified. This is an expression that is not simplified. So you've got to simplify it first. Again, working with our groups, pausing the recording so you can work on it at home and then come back to check your answers. Ready, set, go. Okay, when I walked around the room, it looked pretty good here on this one. We have an expression equal to an expression, but we've got to simplify this first. And when I simplify this, 2x minus x, you all agree that that's going to be 1x left over, right? 1x plus 4. That's now simplified, but it is still an equation, so that simplified version is still equal to negative 8. What do I do now? How do I undo adding 4? I saw so many make this mistake, and it's such a silly mistake to make. How do I undo adding 4, Aiden? Subtracting 4. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side. That leaves me with x is equal to, use your calculator here if you need to, don't make silly mistakes, negative 8 minus 4. Emily? No? You are afraid you made a silly mistake? Gavin? It is negative 12. Emily, did you make a silly mistake or were you right? No, I was right. You were right. Have that confidence. Okay, number 6. Expression equal to an expression. And man, there's a lot going on there. We got to simplify, right? Eyes on the screen for this one. I didn't see mistakes necessarily, but I saw some unsureness of what to do next. We're going to simplify first. I have negative 2x minus 3, so I'm thinking of that as adding a negative 3, plus 4x plus 5. And do you see how I've got some x tiles here and some x tiles here? When I combine these negative x tiles and these positive x tiles, what do I end up with? Come on, guys, you had lots of time to work on this. When I combine these negative x tiles with these positive x tiles, what do I have, CJ? 2 x tiles, and they're positive. Now, eyes on the screen, because this is a silly thing to make some mistakes on. Use your tools. And by tools, I mean calculator. What we're doing is we're combining negative 2x plus 4x. So how can I use my calculator for that? If you try and use your calculator to type in negative 2x plus 4x, the calculator is going to scream at you and say, hey, I don't know what x is. You haven't defined the variable. I can't do anything with that. But all it's saying is, I can't do the math for you. I can't do x's for you. But aren't we really saying what's negative 2 of something plus 4 of something? It's 2. So you can still use your tools. You don't have to put in the x's. In fact, if you do, it's going to mess it up. But if you're having a hard day and you can't figure it out, then use your tools. Like you can do here. What if you have 3 negative unit tiles and 5 positive unit tiles? What are you going to have? Okay, either your hand is raised or you're doing it in your calculator like I just showed you, right? Negative 3 tiles plus 5 unit tiles. Liz, what do you got? 2. And they're positive. That's why she said just 2 instead of negative 2. So 2x plus 2. We have now simplified, eyes on the screen. We're not done though. We just took the step of simplifying the expression, but remember that expression is part of an equation that is equal to 10. So I bring down the equal sign, bring down the 10, and now I have an equation to solve. Build your flow map if you need to. I'm going to undo adding 2 by subtracting 2. Balance it by doing the same thing to the other side. 2 minus 2 zeros out. 10 minus 2 simplifies to 8. A is equal to 2x. Divide each side by 2, and we get x is equal to 4. How'd you guys do on that one? Thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down. Hands up above the head so I can see them. Okay, much better than on the homework one. So practicing does help. Now, this is a model of an equation that we are going to write, and we're going to write it together so that you can see what my expectations are. We have to write the equation. It says write the symbolic representation, meaning the equation of this model. One thing, remember I talked about this in the last lesson, I don't like that it doesn't include those equal signs. Please remember that that bar means that all of the stuff on this side is equal to all of the stuff on this side. We good? Let's focus. So, what do I have? We're going to go just column by column. What do I have? 3 x's. And I know that there's another x right next to it, but since it's in a different column, I want to separate it. So 3 x's plus another x plus 4 plus 2. All of that is equal to 1, 2 positive unit tiles. So the symbolic representation is 3x plus x plus 4 plus 2 is equal to 2. But of course, this really doesn't make sense to keep these in 2 separate places. 4 tiles plus 2 tiles, really truly all together, that's 6 tiles. So 4 plus 2 is 6. And just like it doesn't make sense to keep these in 2 different places, 3x plus another x is equal to 4x. So 4x plus 6 is equal to 2. We've now simplified that original side that was unsimplified. It's an equation, so now the simplified version is equal to 2, and we can solve it like an equation. Flow map if you need it. I'm going to undo adding 6 by subtracting 6. Balance it, same thing on each side. And that means I have 4x is equal to, and balance with 2 minus 6. Again, use your tools. Don't make silly mistakes here. 2 minus 6 in your calculator. Gavin, it is negative 4. And now I undo x being multiplied by 4 by dividing by 4. Balance it, do the same thing to the other side, and we have x is equal to negative 4 divided by 4 is a negative 1. That was easy, right? Okay, 8, 9, 10, and 11. With your groups, we're going to go over those, and then we're going to do number 12, which is a story problem. And then it's going to be time to go. So with your groups, 8, 9, 10, and 11, we're going to pause the recording so that you can have a chance to do it on your own, and then continue in the recording when you're ready to go over it. Ready, set, go. Negative 7x plus 5x, we can combine as we simplify. And negative 7x plus 5x will simplify to just being 2 negative x tiles, negative 2x. Plus 3 is equal to a negative 9. So now we've simplified, now it's time to solve. I'm going to undo adding 3 by subtracting 3. Balance it, do the same thing to the other side. That zeroes out, and I have negative 2x is equal to negative 9 minus 3 is equal to a negative 12. Divide each side by a negative 2. And we have x is equal to a positive 6. Next one. Again, we're simplifying before we solve. M, which is going to be like an x tile, just an m tile, 5 and negative 3 m tiles. When I combine these m's with these m's, I end up with negative 2m. Don't forget we still have our plus 5 unit tiles. And all of that is simplified, but it is equal to 17. Now we're ready to solve. So I begin by subtracting 5 from each side. 17 minus 5 is 12, which is equal to and balanced with the negative 2m. Divide each side by a negative 2. And we have negative 6 is equal to m. This one, just because there's decimals doesn't mean it's time to be afraid or time to be scared. They work the same way. It's just you have 2b and half of a b. But if we have b's here and b's here, it makes sense that we're going to combine those to be in just one place. 2.5b is equal to a negative 50. 2.5 is multiplied by b. We undo the multiplication with division. And when I do this, I have b is equal to negative 50 divided by 2.5. Thank you, Kaden. Good catch. Negative 20. Number 11. Same thing over here. Just because we've got some fractions now doesn't mean it's time to be afraid. Especially because, honestly, this one's fewer steps than the others. We don't have to simplify. We have negative 4/3 units and 6 R tiles. We don't need to simplify. We can go straight into solving. How do I get rid of a negative 4/3? Liz. Adding a positive 4/3. Yeah, we just have to have a positive, and that's going to zero that out. Balance it. Do the same thing to the other side. Those 0. Careful, make sure you're using your tools. Negative 2/3 plus 4/3 is equal to a positive 2/3. And all of that is equal to 6r. That means r is multiplied by 6. And I undo that multiplication with division. So now I have 2/3 divided by 6. Again, use your tools if you need to, if you cannot do that in your head. And 2/3 divided by 6 is 1/9. R is equal to 1/9. Fractions are friends. Don't try and write a decimal. Fractions are friends. And now it's time for a story. Carson and his family drove to Disneyland. They started driving on Thursday and then stopped for the night. On Friday, they drove twice as many miles as they had on Thursday. And on Saturday, they drove 50 miles more than they had on Friday. Carson's mom is a good mom who makes Carson do work on vacation. And Carson's mom says, hey, write an equation to determine how many miles we've driven each day. This is what Carson wrote. M plus 2m plus 2m plus 50, and it is equal to 650. Because if you skip down to part B, if Carson and his family live 650 miles from Disneyland, so that's where we're getting that. This is a matching. Match each of these small expressions with the part that it represents in the story. Let's reread that story again as we're trying to figure out what does M represent. They started driving on Thursday and then stopped for the night. On Friday, they drove twice as many miles as they had on Thursday. Do you think you know what M and what 2M might be, Aiden? Okay, let's make sure we're paying attention, please. CJ, do you have some thoughts? Yes, M is the number of miles they drove on Thursday. And the clue for that is the next day, on Friday, they drove twice as many miles as they had on Thursday. So if this is M, then twice as many is going to be 2M. So we can start matching now. M is what they drove on Thursday. 2M is, since they drove M on Thursday, 2M is the amount they drove on Friday, since Friday was twice as many. On Saturday, they drove 50 more miles than they had on Friday. Remember how on Friday they drove 2M? So 50 miles more is going to be that same 2M plus an extra 50. That is the number of miles that they drove on Saturday. I forgot to do the green to connect them. So by process of elimination, I think we know, but let's also make sense of all of that too. What does M plus 2M plus the 2M plus 50 actually represent? Well, that's all of the miles they drove on Friday and Saturday, or sorry, Thursday and Friday and Saturday. This is the total number of miles. So part B, if Carson and his family live 650 miles from Disneyland, how many miles did Carson's family drive each day? Go back to the original. We have M plus 2M plus 2M plus 50, all of that, which is equal to 650. How many M's do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5M plus 50, which is equal to 650. This is just an equation to solve. It was an equation to solve, but we had to take that step of simplifying it first, combining the like terms. All of the M's in all the different places make more sense all together in one place. And now we can solve. We subtract 50 from each side, and we have 5M, which is equal to 600. Divide each side by 5, and we have M is equal to 600 divided by 5. Gavin? Thank you, 120. So what does that mean? Remember, M is the number of miles driven on Thursday. So Thursday is 120. Friday, how many did they drive Friday? 2M. So that's going to be 2 times M, which is 240. Saturday is 2M plus 50. We already know that 2M is 240, plus 50 is 290. Your homework is 1.1C homework section. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.